The words "Jesus saves" can be found on car bumper stickers, on church posters, and on the lips of many American preachers. But what use are these words to an illiterate slum dweller in Outer Mongolia? They can't read, they don't have the internet, and they've as much chance of hearing these words as they do of finding a diamond under their pillow. They might dream of a heavenly place free of poverty and pain, because they've never heard of Jesus, God's going to sentence them to hell. Or so the argument goes. Does God send people to hell who have never heard of Jesus? What happens to those who have never heard the words, Jesus saves? Well, the Bible doesn't have an exact answer to these questions for us. However, there are several points that are worth noting. Firstly, Jesus is God's solution to hell, not the reason he sends people there. Imagine a debt collector knocks on the door of a debtor in order to take them to prison. That's unfair, the person in debt replies. I can't pay the debt. I don't have the money. Not having the solution, money, does not mean the person in question is not guilty. Their crime is fraud, overspending, tax evasion, or whatever else got them into debt. You cannot plead innocence just because you don't have a get-out-of-free jail card. The Bible likens sin to debt for the following reasons. God has given us every good thing we have, and yet we have neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. We owe God thanks and appreciation for all he has given us, and yet we give him only token appreciation or no acknowledgement at all. Jesus is the solution to this debt, but not having the solution does not mean we're not guilty of a crime. Secondly, the solution is needed because a real crime has taken place. We could all forgive our Outer Mongolian child for squatting on a piece of abandoned land. The land may belong to the government, but to them it looks like an open space covered in a thin layer of dust. But would Bill Gates forgive us if we decided we'd squat in his mansion? If we trashed his property, drank wine from his wine cellar, and helped ourselves to his private helicopter, could we claim to be as innocent as that Mongolian child? Could we say, I'm sorry, Bill, I didn't know you lived there. Yes, I saw the Microsoft logo everywhere, but I sincerely thought I won this property at last week's church bingo. Even if we were completely ignorant of the fact that this was Bill Gates' house, we at least should have recognized that this was the house of someone important. Most average houses don't have Olympic swimming pools or 10 garages full of luxury cars. The reason none of us have any excuse for ignoring God is that we're all squatters on his property. We all live on God's world. And we have more than enough knowledge to know that God exists. The Bible describes it like this: since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. The universe around us is immeasurable. The earth we live on is both perfectly balanced and awesomely beautiful. Even if we won the biggest lottery prize ever, none of us could afford or design a house that was complex and amazing as the world we live in. There clearly has to be a great designer behind this world. This designer is what people call God. All people have access to this knowledge, some more, some less. But rather than accepting these facts revealed to us, we choose to ignore them or come up with fictitious alternatives for how life came about. as these verses in the Bibles go on to say, we've all exchanged the truth about God for a lie. Thirdly, hearing about the solution is not the solution. Most debt collectors are quite content to send people to prison, as long as they get paid a wage. However, unlike our debt collector, God was willing to pay the price of our debt himself. Jesus described his mission in the following way. The Son of Man, Jesus, did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus came to pay our debt for us. For as God's Son, Jesus was the only one who could pay the infinitely great price for our sin against an infinitely great God. And yet, in Jesus' day, many who heard about Jesus did not then go and do anything about it. For example, a group of religious leaders called the Pharisees witnessed Jesus' miracles and listened attentively to Jesus' teaching. And yet, despite all this information, they did not go and do anything about it. Hearing about the solution does not naturally or automatically lead to that solution being accepted. For every sign that says wet cement, there are a set of handprints in that cement. For every sign that says no ball games, there were 5 ball games being played. For every sign saying wash your own cups, there's a sink full of dirty cups. Lots of signs, clearer information, more education, they don't automatically lead to application. And despite the Pharisees having all the information available to them, that did not stop them rejecting the idea that Jesus was God's Son. Even today, people who have more than enough information about Jesus don't automatically go on to believe about Jesus. So what happens to those who have never heard about Jesus? Well, good question. But the Bible is not clear about the answer. What will happen to me if I hear and reject Jesus? To this question, the answer is very clear. And lastly and fourthly, there is a solution for everyone who seeks it. The message about Jesus has been translated into more languages, crossed more borders, and been told more than any other piece of information in the entire history of the world. God has certainly invested great effort in getting the message that Jesus saves into people's hands. And yet, in the first century, when very little had been done to spread this information, God made sure that those who sought it found it. When an Ethiopian was seeking answers, God sent a messenger in his direction with the answers. When a man named Cornelius was truly seeking God, God sent a man named Peter to tell him about Jesus. When some people in Macedonia were crying out for help, God sent them a man named Paul with the message that Jesus saves. Speaking to the people of Israel, God spoke these words: "Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, says the Lord." A principle God works on is this: if people seek him, they will find him. For an Iranian Muslim with no access to the Bible, that revelation might come through a vision or a dream. From Outer Mongolian slum dweller, a sincere prayer might lead to God sending a missionary in thy direction. Some have sought to know the true God for many years, only to have the Bible translated into their language in their old age. It would be a crime for them now to then reject this revelation. It would be an even worse crime for you and me. God has revealed himself to us in the person and work of his Son, Jesus Christ. And though we cannot be certain what will happen to those who have not heard about him, we all have the responsibility to act on the information we have at hand.